When Officer Troy Mendenhall pulled over what looked like a calm, composed driver on a quiet Louisiana road, he thought it would be nothing more than a routine stop. What he didn't expect was to end up pointing his gun at a real FBI agent while the entire encounter was being captured on camera. The evening sun was low, bleeding orange streaks through the pine trees that lined St. Landry Road. It had been a long day for Special Agent DeShawn Trenholm. 12 hours of site interviews, endless paperwork, and even a working dinner with a state investigator over gumbo at a no-frills diner off I-10. He wasn't rushing home, wasn't speeding. The roads were familiar, and his house was only 15 minutes away. Driving his charcoal gray Chevy Tahoe, DeShawn let his thoughts drift toward tomorrow's debrief, but then flashing blue lights erupted in his rearview mirror. No siren, just lights. He eased his SUV onto the gravel lot of a small Baptist church, his body heavy with exhaustion but not surprise. An unmarked cruiser, a black man behind the wheel, tinted windows. In Louisiana back roads, that combination always seemed to attract suspicion. DeShawn cut the engine, lowered the windows halfway, and kept both hands on the wheel. The cruiser door slammed shut harder than necessary. In the side mirror, DeShawn caught his first glimpse. A young white officer, early 30s, square jaw, buzz cut. He walked with that stiff, chest-out stride that radiated authority without patience. Then came the voice, sharp, loud, already irritated. License and registration. Step out of the car. No introduction, no explanation, just orders. DeShawn kept his voice steady even. Sir, I'd prefer to remain in the vehicle. I'm a federal agent, FBI. I'm armed and I have my credentials right here in the inner left pocket. I can hand them over slowly. The officer squinted, unimpressed. Then he shook his head like he'd heard the excuse 100 times before. Get out of the vehicle. DeShawn stayed still. I'm following protocol. I have informed you I'm armed and on duty status. Let me show you my badge and ID. The cop's hand hovered near his belt. You fit the description of a suspect, he snapped. DeShawn exhaled sharply through his nose. What suspect? I'll ask the questions, the officer cut him off. Either you comply or I escalate. Moving slowly, DeShawn reached into his pocket with 2 fingers, careful to keep his motions visible. He pulled out his badge and ID, flipping them open against the fading light. Special Agent DeShawn Trenholm, Lafayette Field Office, you're making a mistake. But the officer barely looked at the credentials before smirking and pressing his radio. This guy's flashing fake ID. Possible impersonator, black male, late 30s, armed, refusing orders, requesting backup. DeShawn's throat dried, not from fear, but from recognition. He'd seen situations like this spiral out of control too many times. This wasn't an accident, this was deliberate. He raised his voice just enough to make sure the body cam picked it up. My hands are visible. I have not exited the vehicle. I have clearly identified myself as a federal agent. You are escalating this stop without cause. The officer's eyes narrowed. You think I care about your badge? Their eyes locked. A dog barked across the street. A screen door creaked open, then shut quickly. DeShawn's thoughts weren't on how to fight, but how to survive. There was nothing left to say. The next move wouldn't be his. It would come from backup, and that backup might not be nearly as composed. He glanced at the dash camera mounted on the patrol car. Good. It was aimed directly at him. Under his breath, he muttered, Let's hope someone's watching this. But DeShawn didn't know that help wasn't coming to calm things down. No, this was about to get worse. Officer Troy Mendenhall stepped back from the Tahoe, hands still hovering above his holster like a cowboy in a standoff he was sure he'd already won. His mouth was set hard, his posture locked. Nothing, not a badge, not credentials, was going to shake him from the decision he had already made. DeShawn remained still, His badge and ID sat clearly on the dashboard, gold lettering catching the last streaks of sunlight. But Mendenhall wasn't looking at it. He was too busy staring down the man in the driver's seat, waiting for him to blink first. Last chance? Mendenhall growled. Step out or I'll extract you myself. DeShawn's reply was steady, measured. I am not a threat. My body is right here. My hands are visible. My firearm is holstered. You do not have probable cause. But Mendenhall ignored him, raising his radio again. Unit 42 to dispatch. I need immediate backup. Suspect armed, uncooperative, possible federal impersonator. Location, St. Landry and Briarview. DeShawn stayed focused, jaw tight. He wasn't a rookie. For 5 years, he had investigated officer misconduct and public corruption across Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi. He had walked through squad rooms where ego outweighed protocol. Now he was living it. Mendenhall circled the Tahoe, peering through windows, hoping to find something, drugs, a weapon, anything to justify his suspicion. But the only things in sight were a bureau laptop bag, stacks of case files, and a pair of gym shoes. DeShawn didn't move, hands stretched across the wheel, steady as if he were back at Quantico, drilling firearm safety. He'd faced raids, trafficking busts, violent suspects, but this moment was different. This wasn't about crime. This was about control. And control on a darkening Louisiana roadside could get a man killed. 3 long minutes later, another cruiser's lights appeared in his mirror. 2 officers stepped out, one, a woman in her late 40s with a calm presence, and beside her a rookie barely old enough to shave. The woman walked toward Mendenhall, listening as he tried to sell the threat. Then she moved to DeShawn's window, voice calm but firm. Sir, we're going to figure this out. Do you have identification? DeShawn didn't speak. He simply pointed to the badge and ID already displayed. She leaned closer, examined them carefully, then looked back at DeShawn. Are you armed? Yes, he answered. Right side holster, Glock 19, safety on, standard bureau issue. She gave a quick nod, then stepped back. To the rookie at her side, she whispered one word, legit. But Mendenhall wasn't done. His voice cut through, sharp and defensive. You sure? He says he's FBI, but those credentials look fake. The female officer shot him a flat look. You seen many FBI credentials? Mendenhall stayed silent. She radioed dispatch, asking for confirmation of the ID number. DeShawn stayed motionless. He knew it would take seconds. And in those seconds, Mendenhall kept his thumb brushing the edge of his holster, still searching for a reason. But less than a minute later, the radio crackled back with confirmation. Special Agent DeShawn Trenholm, active badge number, matches bureau records. The words landed like a hammer. The female officer folded her arms, stepping back. The rookie looked uncertain. And Mendenhall? He froze. 10 full seconds before he finally blinked, shifting his stance like the ground had dropped beneath him. Trying to play it cool, he adjusted his belt and walked back toward the Tahoe. Agent Trenholm, he said, forcing his voice calm. You understand we had to be cautious. These days you can't be too careful. DeShawn didn't respond. He just stared. Mendenhall pressed on. No offense, but you were being uncooperative. That was the sentence that lit the fuse. DeShawn rolled the window fully down. His voice was calm but edged with steel. You never asked for ID. You pointed a gun at me and called back up claiming I was impersonating a federal agent. Don't you dare call that protocol. Mendenhall stiffened. The other 2 officers stayed silent. DeShawn continued, voice low but unwavering. I've interviewed over 200 officers in misconduct cases. You all say the same thing afterward. I was just being cautious. But caution doesn't look like this. Caution checks the badge first. Mendenhall had no reply, and in that silence the balance of power began to shift. I need everything we've got on Mendenhall pulled up tonight, DeShawn said. IA's about to open a case, but I don't trust them to look past their own front door. Got it, came the reply. You good? I'm breathing, DeShawn answered. That's what matters. By the time he pulled into his driveway, a brick single story in the Pecan Grove neighborhood, His mind was already running through the next steps. Laptop under his arm, badge clipped back into its case, bureau notepad waiting on the counter like an open journal. He'd barely started writing the first line when his phone lit up. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Trenholm, this is Reese Lorick. The sergeant's voice was low, tired but sharp. You home? Yes, why? Because someone leaked the footage. Local station just ran 30 seconds of the stop. Your ID, your badge, your exact words when he ordered you out. DeShawn didn't blink. That didn't take long. No, it didn't. We're trying to find the source, but it's out now, and there's more coming. What do you mean? Two neighbors had doorbell cams. One caught audio, the other got an angle from across the street, shows Mendenhall pacing with his hand on the gun before even speaking to you. That's already on social. We're losing control of the story. You never had control, DeShawn said flatly. I figured you'd say that. DeShawn rubbed a hand down his face. Let me guess, your department's getting calls. More like threats. Protest groups tagging our Facebook. A councilman in Opelousas is demanding a statement by sunrise. My inbox has 50 messages, half of them national outlets. You're not calling for advice, are you? No, I'm calling to tell you I just came from Mendenhall's place. He's claiming you set him up. Says it was a trap. DeShawn gave a bitter laugh. A trap? Yeah, he's saying you provoked him, that you used your badge to bait him. He wasn't even smart enough to ask for ID, DeShawn muttered. All I did was sit there. That was the threat. A black man who didn't panic. Lorick exhaled. That's why I called. Whatever's coming, this may go federal. I hope it does, DeShawn said, because I'm not interested in saving face. I want patterns exposed. This wasn't just one cop on one road. There was a long silence on the line. What do we do next? Lorick finally asked. You protect your department by stepping back. Let the Bureau and DOJ handle it. If you try to spin this, you'll make it worse. Another pause, then, you know what Mendenhall told me right after you drove off? What? He said, I didn't see anything wrong. I just saw someone who didn't look like he belonged. DeShawn's grip tightened around the phone. There it was, that quiet confession hidden behind the uniform, that single sentence that explained everything. That's the problem, DeShawn said. I know, Lorick replied softly. DeShawn hung up. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment, then sat at his kitchen table. Tomorrow would bring news vans, bureau pressure, a department scrambling to explain. But for now, in the stillness of his own home, he let himself feel the one thing he hadn't dared to on the roadside, exhaustion, not just from the stop, but from the years of knowing, calculating, always being ready, even with a badge, training, and title. But he also knew something else. By morning, this wouldn't be just his story anymore. The Lafayette field office was already humming when DeShawn walked in at 8:06 a.m. The receptionist didn't say a word, just gave him a long, unreadable look. Upstairs, Agent Cheryl Dawes was waiting near the break room, arms crossed, phone in hand. It's everywhere, she said. Footage hit national last night, CNN, MSNBC. Someone even cut the audio over gospel music. DeShawn half smiled, weary. Guess I should be flattered. I'd be pissed, she said, but you've always had more restraint than the rest of us. They walked down to the operations room, where 3 supervisors, 2 analysts, and a tense assistant special agent in charge, Roland Beach, sat at the round table. On the wall, a frozen frame, Mendenhall, leaning into DeShawn's window, hand too close to his weapon. Trenholm, Beach said, take a seat. DeShawn slid into the chair. Beach leaned forward. I won't waste your time. The footage speaks for itself. You handled it by the book, calm, professional, identified yourself, recorded it all. But this is political now. Local press is pushing for DOJ. The mayor's calling it a civil rights failure. Let me guess, DeShawn said. They want me to stay quiet. They're recommending no interviews, no statements until further notice. DeShawn smirked, because that's worked so well before. DeShawn, Beach said carefully, you know how this goes. Yeah, DeShawn replied. I do. That's why I'm not waiting for permission. I'll document, report, comply, but I won't vanish to protect someone's PR. The room went still. Cheryl Dawes finally spoke. He's not a rookie, Roland. He didn't go looking for trouble. He was going home. That officer made the choice to escalate. Beachside, the optics, they're not optics, DeShawn cut in. They're reality. You want me to be quiet because someone might be uncomfortable with the truth. What about how comfortable that officer was treating me like a suspect? No threat, no warrant, just my face and a government vehicle. Silence hung heavy. Then Beach gave in. Fine, but copy a bureau liaison on everything you send. No surprises. DeShawn stood. I'll play it by the book. Doesn't mean I'll stay quiet. By noon, Lafayette's courthouse steps were packed. What began as neighbors with handmade signs had swelled into 200 people. Protest chants echoed. Badge, blind justice. Silence is complicity. At the center stood Lenora Maddox, a 63-year-old retired teacher turned activist, microphone clipped to her collar, voice steady as stone. This isn't just about Agent Trenholm. This is about how easily some people see us as a threat before they even ask for a name. If an FBI badge doesn't protect him, then what protects our sons? Our fathers? Our daughters? The crowd roared. Hashtags, badge didn't matter, triage justice for Trenholm lit up statewide. News vans lined the street. Inside the sheriff's office, Chief Deputy Alton Dreyer stared out a tinted window, jaw tight. No controlling it now, he muttered. We need a statement by 5. Nothing canned, something real. Meanwhile, at his own kitchen table, DeShawn ignored the buzz of interview requests and angry strangers. He'd already filed reports to D.C., already handed evidence to DOJ. Still, his phone kept lighting up. At 3:47 p.m., a name he hadn't seen in years appeared. Kendra Louvier, federal prosecutor. She didn't ask how he was. She asked what they could do next. Your footage, the prior complaints, I've read your folder. This department's a ticking bomb, she said. And you just set the timer. I didn't set it, DeShawn replied. I just refused to pretend it wasn't already counting down. By sundown, the protests doubled. Students watched the footage on their phones. Parents asked harder questions at dinner. Even inside other precincts, officers were being pulled into briefings about bias and escalation. And somewhere in the city, Troy Mendenhall sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at a cold plate of spaghetti and a notice taped to his door. Pre-termination hearing, Friday at 9 a.m. He told himself he wasn't a bad cop, but the whole country had seen what he looked like in the heat of that stop. The hand, the voice, the eyes, and no one was going to forget. I just happened to have a badge when it happened to me, DeShawn said. But that badge didn't shield me from assumption. It didn't buy me grace, and it sure didn't slow his hand. He paused, then added quietly, the badge didn't protect me. It just made people pay attention. A woman in the back raised her hand. So what happens now, she asked. To the department, will they fix it? DeShawn took a deep breath. That's not a question for me, he said. That's a question for all of us. Will we fix it? Will we keep pressure on city leadership? Will we demand real oversight, real training, real consequences? Or will we let this be another headline we forget by next month? The room was silent. Then a young man, maybe early 20s, wearing a UL Lafayette hoodie, spoke up. What would have happened if you weren't FBI? DeShawn met his eyes. I probably would have been cuffed, maybe worse. The room stiffened. No one disagreed. Another hand rose. Mrs. Roslin, a retired librarian, her voice slow but steady. I remember when we fought to integrate the schools here. People thought that would be the end of it, like laws change minds. But the way we're policed, it's like our kids are still being told they don't belong. Doesn't matter what's in your wallet or what letters are on your ID. DeShawn leaned forward. And the problem is, it's not always the obvious stuff. Sometimes it's small. A glance, a tone, an assumption that you're lying, that you're dangerous, that you need controlling. Silence again. Heavy, thoughtful silence. Finally, someone asked, "So what can we do next?" Before DeShawn could answer, Reverend Perrin spoke. "We keep showing up, we file complaints, we hold public meetings, we vote, we train our young people not just to survive but to lead. We write letters, we hold the microphone, and when one of our own goes through it, even if he wears a badge, we don't let him carry it alone." DeShawn looked down at his hands. "I'm tired of carrying it alone," he admitted. One by one, people laid their hands on his shoulder, his back, the edge of his seat. No applause, no speeches, just presence. That night, the conversation didn't end in the community center. It spilled into porches, kitchens, church halls, corner stores. People started asking their officers harder questions. City council members got emails they weren't ready for. Parents spoke new words at bedtime, not about fear, but about dignity. But even as the community raised its voice, one piece remained, and it belonged to DeShawn himself. 2 days later, he sat across from a microphone in a quiet, windowless podcast studio at a community college on the edge of Opelousas. The host, a local journalist named Vernon Slay, had reached out personally. No gimmicks, no pressure, just space to speak. It was the first time DeShawn agreed to talk publicly since the incident. Not at a press conference, not with a bureau liaison hovering, just him, Vernon, and the red recording light glowing in the corner. "We can edit anything you're not comfortable with," Vernon said. "But before we start, can I ask, why here? Why now?" DeShawn adjusted the mic. "Because the people who need to hear this aren't sitting in marble offices in D.C. They're in classrooms, in patrol cars, at kitchen tables, and if I'm going to talk, it has to be for them." The recording began. "I'm DeShawn Trenholm. I've been an FBI agent for 11 years. I investigate corruption, misconduct, and civil rights violations across the southern region. Last Thursday, I was pulled over on my way home. The officer didn't ask who I was. He didn't care about my badge. He saw someone he didn't trust, not because of a tip, not because of my behavior, but because I didn't flinch. I followed every rule, hands on the wheel, calm voice, identification in plain sight, and it still wasn't enough. If it wasn't enough for me, with a federal badge, years of experience, full legal authority, then what chance does a teenager have driving home from football practice with a broken taillight? Vernon didn't interrupt. DeShawn pressed on. "This isn't about good cops or bad cops. It's about a culture that rewards fear over curiosity, a culture that treats control as power and questioning as threat. I didn't survive that traffic stop because I was lucky. I survived because I knew how not to scare him, and that should never be the skill that keeps us alive." He looked up. "That officer made a choice, but he didn't invent the playbook. He just followed it." Vernon asked softly, "So what would you say to people listening, people who saw the footage and felt helpless?" DeShawn thought a moment. "Start small. Start local. Know your city council. Know your sheriff. File the complaint even when they tell you it won't matter. Support officers who serve with integrity and demand the same from the ones who don't. We don't fix this with hashtags alone. We fix it with action." His voice grew firmer. "And if you're in law enforcement, examine what you're taught to look for, who you're taught to fear. Ask yourself, when did caution become license for disrespect? If your badge makes you feel taller, you're wearing it wrong." Silence lingered before Vernon ended the recording. They shook hands. No cameras, no applause. Outside, the Louisiana night air was heavy but warm. DeShawn glanced at the sky, then down at his buzzing phone. Interview requests, speaking invitations, a call from the NAACP, one from DOJ. He ignored them, just sat in his car for a long moment, not in fear, not in anger, but in clarity. Because the truth was, DeShawn never wanted to become a story, he just wanted to go home. But now that the world was listening, he wasn't going to waste it. He pulled out his notebook, fresh policy ideas he'd been drafting quietly for months. A proposal to redefine training for small police departments. Implicit bias, de-escalation, accountability from day one. He hit record on his phone. "Day one," he said, "starts with telling the truth, so here's mine. If this story made you pause, don't stop there. Share it, talk about it, challenge someone. Ask yourself, who are we protecting and who are we failing to see? He stopped, exhaled, then added, silence won't fix anything, but your voice might.